Funny how you can live with someone for over a decade and still not know when they start treating your life like a side project. I was married to Laura for 11 years. We had the kind of marriage that looked stable from the outside: 2 cars, 1 mortgage, 2 credit cards, 1 shared, 1 for emergencies, and 1 golden retriever named Milo, who liked to sleep with his head on my foot like some kind of therapy dog I didn't know I needed. Laura taught high school English. She read poetry. She believed in composting and bought beeswax wraps instead of plastic. I ran a tech consulting firm out of our home office, mostly helping small businesses transition to cloud infrastructure. I had a coffee habit, a standing desk, and a calendar so color-coded it looked like abstract art. Predictable. Dependable. Boring. Maybe. But safe. That was our life. Neatly folded, well-swept, politely rehearsed. Until about 6 months ago, when I started noticing things. I don't mean lipstick on a collar. She was too careful for that. I mean little behavioral shifts. The phone, once casually tossed on the kitchen counter, now traveled everywhere: bathroom, laundry room, even out to the compost bin. She changed her lock screen to some vague minimalist art that could have been anything from a sunset to a scan of her guilt. Her smiles had lag, like her face was buffering before delivering them. She laughed at her phone more than she laughed at me. She stopped asking about my day. And when I asked about hers, she answered like I was a customer, not a husband. Busy, she'd say, or, you know how it is. I didn't, actually. But I stopped asking. You know what no one tells you? That sometimes you stay quiet not because you don't care, but because you already know. You're just not ready to confirm it yet. The death of a marriage is less like a fire and more like carbon monoxide. You don't see it, but it kills just the same. Then, on a Thursday so normal it might as well have been a beige wall, she forgot to lie. She left her iPad on the dining table when she left for her department meeting. No password. No locked screen. Just open, as if the universe finally got bored of watching me ignore the obvious. I wasn't snooping. Honestly, I just heard it ding. A notification popped up. Can't wait to see you tonight, face-blowing kiss. No name. Just the message. The kind of emoji you don't send a colleague. I stared at it for a full 30 seconds. Then I picked up the iPad, opened the Messages app, and started reading. Derek. That was his name. Derek with a K, because of course it was. He was the assistant basketball coach at her school. Early 30s. Muscles on loan from a discount fitness magazine. Drove a matte black Dodge Charger with a vanity plate that read D4RK. I wish I was kidding. Their messages were earnest. Cringeworthy, really. Long threads of flirtation that belonged to people who thought they invented infidelity. You make me feel alive again, she wrote in one. You make me forget he even exists. He, by the way, was me. There were pictures, hotel receipts, voice memos, even a calendar invite labeled Coffee with D. Blackheart at 9:15 p.m. in a Marriott 3 exits from our house. I wasn't angry. Not really. I felt efficient. I created a folder on my laptop called Laura_case study and started archiving. Screenshots. Exported messages. Downloaded the full iCloud sync into an encrypted USB drive. She'd chosen a simple password for everything. Fitzgerald82. As in F. Scott Fitzgerald. Because nothing says romantic irony like cheating on your husband using the name of a man who drank himself to death writing about the rot behind wealth and beauty. Once I had everything, I backed it up twice. One on a portable drive I kept in my gun safe, the other in a secure cloud drive registered under an LLC I set up for property litigation research. You see, while Laura was busy playing tragic heroine in her own low-budget drama, I'd been closing a deal. Quietly. Methodically. 6 months ago, I sold my company. 7 years of my life, coding late nights, managing burnout, scaling teams, hiring people better than me, and trusting them. All of it led to a buyer out of Chicago, who paid exactly $4.3 million for the acquisition. Now here's the kicker. Until the deal closed, the money sat in escrow. And until we finalized division of marital assets, if a divorce were to happen, that money would be community property. Split 50-50. Unless I could prove infidelity. See, Oregon is a no-fault divorce state. But there's a clause, a nice little loophole if you're strategic, that allows judges discretion on asset distribution when dissipation of marital funds or bad faith is involved. In other words, if your wife crossed a line with someone else, and you can prove she was emotionally and financially investing outside the marriage while you were still carrying the weight of the household, the court might just lean in your favor. So I waited. That morning, I made her coffee. Oat milk, half sugar, just like she liked it. She kissed me on the cheek like I was a Labrador. Said she'd be home late. I smiled and said, "Take your time." Then I called a divorce attorney. A friend of mine from college, Stanford Law, partner at a boutique firm in downtown Portland. Her name was Rachel. She listened to my story in silence. When I finished, there was a pause. Then she said, "We're going to destroy her." And we did. But that's next. I didn't pack a bag. Didn't move into a hotel. Didn't sleep on a friend's couch. I stayed exactly where I was, in the house I bought, with the mortgage I paid, and the wife who was cheating under the same roof. She just didn't know I knew. That's the thing no one talks about. The power of staying silent when you've already won. After that morning coffee and her usual, "I'll be home late," I went straight to my laptop. I had a Zoom meeting at 9 o'clock with a logistics client in Des Moines. I smiled the whole time. Took notes. Even complimented a new marketing deck. All while knowing my wife was halfway through planning a rendezvous with a man who used the word "bae" unironically. She thought she was in control. Thought she was the protagonist in a romantic subplot. But what she didn't realize, what cheaters never realize, is that betrayal makes you sloppy. You think you're operating in shadows. But once someone flips the light on, all your moves look absurd. That night, when she walked through the door at 9:27 p.m., makeup a little too fresh, excuses a little too rehearsed, I didn't blink. I looked up from my laptop and said, "Everything go okay?" She smiled. "Long meeting. You know how curriculum stuff is, right?" Curriculum. That's what they're calling it now. I nodded and said, "I heated up some soup if you're hungry." She kissed my forehead and headed upstairs. Probably to shower off Derek's cologne and pretend she still lived here. It was almost sweet. Almost. But I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was building a case. Piece by piece. Day by day. My attorney, Rachel, was a machine. Calm, surgical, and ruthless in ways I appreciated more than I ever thought I would. I gave her everything, the texts, the photos, the hotel receipts, even a Venmo transfer labeled Kissmark Room 217. Subtle. She told me to sit tight. The money from my company's sale was 2 weeks from clearing. Until then, my only job was to act normal. And so I did. I complimented Laura's new dresses. Picked up her dry cleaning. Watched Ted Lasso with her on Sundays like nothing had changed. But something had changed. Me. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a man patiently disassembling a dying structure, beam by beam, so it could collapse exactly where I wanted. 1 week later, I made a point to casually mention that I was rethinking some of our financial stuff. I told her I was considering consolidating accounts, reinvesting, maybe opening a trust for our future. She perked up, thinking she was about to benefit from something. She smiled and said, "You've always been good with that stuff. I trust you." Trust. That word used to mean something. Now it just meant I had free rein to dig deeper into the paper trail. What she didn't know was that I'd already hired a private investigator. Not because I needed more proof, I had enough to wallpaper a courthouse, but because I wanted context. And context is everything in court. Turns out Derek, the assistant coach, had a girlfriend. And that girlfriend had no idea he was whining and dining a married woman on weekday nights. So I paid her a visit. Well, not me directly. Rachel sent one of her firm's clerks, professional, polite, devastating. She didn't take it well. I didn't need her to. I just needed her to message Derek with enough rage to shake his world a little. Which she did. And, as expected, Derek messaged Laura. "Why did you tell her?" "I didn't. I swear." Bullshasters T. "You said this would stay between us." He blocked her 3 hours later. And that, my friends, is how the cracks begin to spread. Not because of the truth, but because of panic. Laura got quiet after that. Not sad. Not guilty. Just quiet. She thought the affair had been discovered by accident. Bad luck. Bad timing. Nothing to do with me. Which is exactly what I wanted her to think. Because when someone thinks you're still in the dark, they underestimate you. And when they underestimate you, they walk right into the trap smiling. 3 days later, the funds from the company sale cleared into escrow. I confirmed the wire. Rachel filed the motion that afternoon. Dissolution of marriage. On grounds of adultery and dissipation of assets. And just like that, the game changed. I waited until Saturday morning. It was sunny. The house smelled like coffee and laundry sheets. Milo was sleeping on the rug. Laura was in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone, probably wondering why Derek hadn't unblocked her yet. I slid the divorce petition across the kitchen island without a word. She looked at the envelope, then at me. What's this? I took a sip of coffee. It's called Consequences. Her face fell. She opened the envelope. Read the first line. Read it again. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She whispered, "You knew." I nodded. The whole time. She looked down, her face pale. It was a mistake. I tilted my head. No, Laura. A mistake is forgetting your anniversary. What you did was a plan. Over weeks. Months. I didn't mean to. Save it. Her eyes started to water. Can we talk about this? We're doing that now. But sure, we'll talk again. In court. She stood up like she was going to say something brave. Some sort of redemption speech. But I'd already left the room. Because you don't stay for the ending when you've already seen the whole movie. By Monday, the texts started coming in. Not from her, from people around her. Friends we hadn't seen in months. Her cousin from Minneapolis. The yoga instructor she never actually liked but still followed on Instagram. All of them, suddenly very interested in how I was doing. That's the thing about divorce. People start choosing sides before they even know what game they're playing. Laura had clearly gone on a little PR tour. Not full-blown smear campaign, not yet, but the usual soft-pitch narrative. We just grew apart. It wasn't working for a while. We're trying to keep it civil for everyone's sake. Translation: I cheated, but I'd prefer no one focus on that part. By Wednesday, I got a call from her friend Melanie, the one who once called me the most emotionally intelligent man she'd ever met. Now suddenly she was asking me if I'd considered reconciliation. I asked her one question. Did Laura tell you about the hotel receipts or the guy with the charger? Long pause. No, she just said she felt disconnected lately. Interesting, I said. Thanks for calling. I hung up. Let me be clear. I wasn't angry at Melanie. People like her don't care about facts. They care about stories. And Laura was spinning hers with the finesse of someone who'd spent a decade grading persuasive essays. But here's the difference. Her version of events was based on emotion. Mine was backed by documents. My attorney had already filed a subpoena for Laura's financials. We wanted to see if she'd made any transfers, withdrawals, or hotel bookings that hadn't been charged to our joint card. Turned out she had a rainy day account. Cute. It had about $13,000 in it. All of it accumulated over time, small withdrawals from grocery money, leftover cash from joint errands, even a few reissued refund checks she'd never mentioned. I wasn't shocked. Honestly, I admired the commitment. See, some people cheat with their bodies. Others cheat with money first. She did both. And because of Oregon's marital asset laws, every cent she stashed could now be used as evidence of intent to dissolve the marriage without disclosure. In legal terms, that's called financial bad faith. In my terms, that's leverage. Rachel told me to keep playing it cool. So I did. I made no social media posts. I didn't text her family. I didn't tell my coworkers. I didn't even tell my parents. Silence was power, and I wasn't about to waste mine on pity. Meanwhile, Laura was unraveling. She still lived in the house, for now, and the tension was thick enough to chew. We barely spoke. She stayed in the guest room, cooked her own meals, walked around like she was a tenant waiting for eviction. Every time she opened her mouth, it was some variation of, "This doesn't have to get messy," or, "We can still keep it fair," or my personal favorite, "We were partners." Doesn't that mean anything? Oh, it meant something. Just not what she thought. She wanted 50% of everything. Half the equity in the house. Half of my savings. Half of the company sale, the one she didn't even know had happened until she saw the papers. She even listed my car in her preliminary asset request. The same car I bought 3 years before we met. I didn't say a word, but Rachel did. She filed a formal response with all evidence attached, texts, dates, payments, the works. And then she included the piece de resistance, a proposed settlement. It offered Laura $0 from the business proceeds, citing clear financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary trust, and infidelity-based asset redirection. But we didn't stop there. We offered her a choice. Option A, settle privately, walk away with a clean separation, a reasonable portion of marital assets, and no public court hearing. Option B, go to trial. Let everything come out, the affair, the private account, the emotional distress claims. Let a judge decide what she deserves. She had 72 hours to decide. The clock started Friday at noon. That night, she knocked on my office door for the first time in weeks. She looked tired. Not sad. Not remorseful. Just cornered. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't look up from my screen. About which part? She sat down anyway. No makeup. Hoodie. Hair tied up like she was trying to look humble. I don't want this to be a war. I finally looked at her. You started the fire, Laura. You don't get to lecture me about the ashes. She swallowed hard. I just thought maybe we could come to some kind of understanding. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. You had a man in your life behind my back for how long? She opened her mouth. Wait, let me guess. It wasn't serious. Or, it just happened. Or my favorite, it meant nothing. I was lonely, she said, quietly. I nodded. And I was loyal. But here we are. She said nothing. Then, and I swear this part still makes me laugh, she asked, can we at least split the business proceeds? You built it during our marriage. I smiled. That's true. But you know what else is true? The moment you started that affair, you forfeited any claim to it. We've got dates, evidence, and an attorney who's seen worse than this in her sleep. She looked down. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Laura, I said calmly, you thought I'd just roll over because I was quiet. You mistook peace for weakness. That's not my problem. She left the room without another word. But I knew she got the message. By Sunday night, Rachel called me. She took option A, she said. Signed everything. How much is she getting? A small portion of liquid savings. Nothing from the business. Nothing from the equity you built before the marriage. No alimony. I nodded. Good. Then Rachel added, you walk away clean. We're drafting the final agreement now. Should be done by next week. And just like that, 11 years, a house, a betrayal, and 1,000 fake smiles later, I was free. Next stop, the million. But that comes later. I thought it was over. The papers were signed. The settlement locked. Laura moved out on a Wednesday afternoon, taking with her 3 suitcases, a desk lamp, and whatever was left of her pride. She didn't say goodbye. I didn't offer one. The silence was satisfying, like the final click of a deadbolt. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. The air cleaner. The rooms brighter. Even Milo seemed to breathe easier, no more tiptoeing around cold energy and colder silences. I was a free man. And then, 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email. Not a text. An actual envelope. Cream-colored. No return address. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Simple. And deadly. To whom it may concern, I have reason to believe that the proceeds from your business sale were intentionally concealed during divorce negotiations. The timing of the transaction, the escrow account, and the NDA terms suggest deliberate non-disclosure. If this is true, it constitutes fraud. It wasn't signed. No sender. No logo. No contact info. Just poison on paper. I read it twice. Then a third time. And I realized something. This wasn't just some idle threat. It was specific. Detailed. And it didn't come from Laura. She didn't know about the NDA. She didn't know about the escrow schedule or the legal shield I'd built with Rachel. No, this came from someone who had known. Someone I used to work with. A guy named Mark. We started my company together. I built the product. He handled sales. 5 years in, he tried to push me out over a funding dispute. It got ugly. Legal. Personal. I bought him out. At a loss. He left furious and loud. Said I'd regret it. Apparently, this was his idea of closure. I called Rachel. Can you do anything? I asked. She paused. If you fully disclosed your assets at the time of filing and the sale hadn't finalized, then no. But if he submits this letter to Laura's attorney or the court, what then? Then we may be looking at a motion to reopen the settlement. A pause. Then she added, it won't go far. But it'll be public. That was the part that mattered. Public. I'd spent my whole career building credibility, discretion, stability. I wasn't a millionaire with a TikTok account. I was the guy people trusted with their money, their systems, their reputation. A fraud allegation, even an unfounded one, would be a stain I couldn't scrub out. And Laura? She wouldn't hesitate to weaponize it. She didn't care about truth. She cared about leverage. Sure enough, 2 days later, I got a call from her new lawyer, someone younger, louder, and clearly less ethical. We'd like to revisit the asset division, he said with fake politeness. There are new disclosures that suggest a portion of your business payout should have been included in marital assets. I laughed. You mean the money that wasn't finalized until weeks after she signed the papers? Well, he said, intent matters. If you structured it in a way to deliberately delay reporting. I cut him off. You're fishing. You have no case. Maybe Maybe not. But are you willing to test that theory in front of a judge? There it was. Not a lawsuit. A shakedown. He wasn't after justice. He was after a settlement. A check. And Laura? She probably thought she had me in a corner again. She didn't. Because what she didn't know was that while she was playing checkers, I had already bought the board. Remember the NDA from the business sale? It included a clause I hadn't told anyone about, not even Rachel. A performance clause. If my reputation was damaged within 12 months of the sale, by litigation, negative press, or public scandal, the buying company could withhold the final payout. Not just a percentage. The whole damn thing. In other words, if Laura took me to court, or even threatened to, I wouldn't just lose face. I'd lose the million. All of it. So I did what any rational man with nothing left to lose would do. I invited her to lunch. Neutral ground. A quiet place with clean lines and no distractions. The kind of restaurant where people wore blazers at noon and whispered into napkins. She showed up late. Wore black, of course. Drama in fabric form. She sat down across from me, smug and calm. "You got my message," she said. "No," I replied. "I got your bluff." She smirked. "You're going to pay either way," she said. "The only difference is how loud it gets." I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled out an envelope of my own and slid it across the table. She opened it. Inside, a copy of the NDA clause. Highlighted. Underlined. Annotated in red ink like one of her students' essays. I waited while she read it. Watched the color drain from her face. "What is this?" "It's what happens," I said, "if you keep pushing." She looked up. "So you're saying if I file, you lose the money?" I nodded. "All of it." She smiled. Then said, "Then maybe you should pay me." And that's when I hit her with the real twist. "I already did," I said. "You just didn't know it." She froze. "What? That $25,000 in liquid savings? That was your payout. I gave it to you. Labeled it as part of our joint balance. But it was a choice. Mine." She blinked. I leaned in, calm and deliberate. "You got a clean exit. No lawyers. No public humiliation." And I got silence. We both walked away looking intact. I sat back. "But if you want to reopen this, Laura, be my guest. Just know this. The second you make it public, I lose everything. And you lose leverage. Because then I don't care anymore." She stared at me. She'd never seen me like that. And now, finally, she understood. I wasn't bluffing. I wasn't scared. I was just done. Laura didn't respond right away. She sat there at the table, holding the NDA clause like it was a breakup letter from someone she didn't know she'd lost. That's when it hit her. She was out of moves. If she filed, I lost the money, and she lost her bargaining chip. If she didn't file, I kept everything, and she got nothing more than what she'd already signed for. And worst of all, she knew I could live with either outcome. Because when a man's already been gutted once, you can't scare him with a paper cut. She folded the document slowly and slid it back across the table. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "You're colder than I thought." I took a sip of my coffee. "No, Laura. You just never paid attention." She left without saying goodbye. And that was the last time I ever saw her in person. A week later, Rachel called to confirm it was over. No motion filed. No follow-up. She's gone quiet. I asked, "What about Mark, the one who sent the letter?" "Handled," Rachel said. "We sent a cease and desist. He doesn't want discovery." He folded. Of course he did. Men like him never want truth. They want chaos, as long as it costs them nothing. But this time it did. So that was it. Settlement confirmed. Threat neutralized. And the final payment from the business cleared. Just over $1.06 million. Wired straight to a trust I'd already set up the month before. Tax efficient. Ironclad. Untouchable. I didn't celebrate. Didn't post about it. Didn't go on vacation or buy a boat or stand on a mountain and scream, "I won." Because this wasn't a win. It was a recalibration. The world didn't owe me closure. It owed me nothing. But I took what was mine, and I protected it. I paid off the house. Donated to a domestic legal advocacy group, anonymously. Bought Milo a better bed. And then, for the first time in a long time, I slept 8 full hours without dreaming about betrayal. But the best part? That came 2 months later. I was sitting at a coffee shop near the river, laptop open, working through a new pitch deck for a startup I just joined as an advisor. A woman walked in. Classy. Quiet confidence. Book in one hand. No makeup, just certainty. She ordered black coffee. Sat alone. Started reading. Didn't check her phone once. I didn't approach her. Not then. But I watched how she smiled at the barista, how she marked her page with a real bookmark instead of folding the corner, how she looked present. The kind of presence you can't fake. The kind that doesn't sneak off to hotel rooms with assistant basketball coaches. She caught me looking once. I didn't look away. She smiled. I smiled back. That was it. Not love at first sight. Not a replacement. Just a beginning. One I wouldn't have recognized if I hadn't gone through hell to get here. That's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. If you survive it, and you do the work, and you stay sharp, you don't just heal. You evolve. And when you do, the people who tried to break you, they end up exactly where they belong. Behind you. Watching. People think karma is a lightning strike. A dramatic moment. Headline-worthy. It's not. Karma is slower. Patient. Sometimes, it's a mirror. Other times, it's a spreadsheet. But it always arrives. 6 months after the divorce, I heard about Laura again, not from her, of course. From a friend of a friend. The kind of passive update that lands in your lap without warning. Apparently, she moved in with Derek. Yeah, that Derek. They rented an apartment just outside the city. One of those luxury units that's really just fresh paint and a gym with a broken treadmill. She left her teaching job 2 months later. The details were fuzzy, but the word uncomfortable environment came up. Translation, she got side-eyed in the staff room. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just noted it. Like weather. She had bet everything on a man who peaked at junior varsity. A man whose claim to fame was leading a team that lost regionals. A man whose primary ambition, based on his social media, was becoming a lifestyle influencer for protein powder. And she thought I was boring. Meanwhile, I kept things quiet. After the payout cleared, I took a long look at what I wanted next, not just career-wise, but life. The trust was generating income. My consulting gigs gave me freedom. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I'd already done the hard thing, not breaking. The real challenge after betrayal isn't revenge. It's discipline. Discipline not to lash out. Not to over-explain. Not to become the bitter man who builds his identity around being wronged. You know what takes more strength than rage? Stillness. I bought a small cabin 2 hours outside Portland. Nothing extravagant. Just land, trees, and silence. Milo liked it. I did too. I kept in touch with Rachel. Not about legal stuff, just life. She called me one afternoon, her voice light. You'll never guess who called the firm today, she said. Laura. No. Derek. That made me pause. She explained. Apparently, he wanted legal advice about cohabitation rights. He'd been helping pay rent. Bought some furniture. And now he was worried that if they broke up, Laura might come after him for a share. I almost dropped the phone. That's not how that works, I said. Rachel laughed. I know. He doesn't. So now Derek, the man Laura staked her fresh start on, was calling lawyers to protect himself from her. There's something poetic about that. I didn't gloat. Not outwardly. But inside, a quiet piece of me clicked into place. The tables had turned, not because I flipped them, but because I walked away from them. A month later, I saw Laura for the last time. Not on purpose. I was at a bookstore downtown, picking up a copy of something I'd been meaning to read for a while, Man's Search for Meaning. Heavy, sure. But I was in the mood for honesty. I turned a corner, and there she was. Alone. No ring. Holding a marked-down copy of some romance novel with a cover that looked like it belonged in a dentist's office. She didn't see me at first, and for a moment, I considered walking away. Letting the moment pass, letting the chapter stay closed. But then she looked up, and our eyes met. Her expression was complicated, some mix of surprise, guilt, nostalgia. She gave me a soft, unsure smile. Hey, she said. Just that. I nodded. Hey. She looked down at the book in her hand, then back at me. You look good. I wanted to say you look like a woman who figured out too late what she lost, but I didn't. Instead, I just said, I feel good. A pause. She opened her mouth, like she was about to launch into some half-apology or what could have been speech. But I stopped her. I'm in a good place, Laura, I said. And I'd like to keep it that way. She closed her mouth. Looked like she might cry. Then nodded. I turned and left. That was it. No dramatic goodbye. No closure scene. Just a man choosing peace and a woman realizing too late that she'd bet on the wrong man. The next morning, I got up early. Made coffee. Watched the fog roll over the trees outside my cabin window. Milo sat at my feet, tail tapping lazily. I checked my account. The trust had generated another $8,400 that month. Passive income from silence. From restraint. From strategy. You don't need revenge when you've got results. And I had them. In full.